I swear to the gods above, this boy right here could have had his own isekai light novel title. I can't believe that time I almost got swindled by the pretty lady until Big Brother Nick came to save the day. But I mean, his ex is just trash. I mean, if the term "she belongs to the streets" has any meaning, it's for a character like this. I mean, I never really was thinking about it. I knew eventually she'd pop back up into the story, as I assume all of their traumas will in some way, shape, and form. But just to see her still doing the same shady BS, and to see just such a cute kid, just probably, he's worked so hard for all that money. He's probably doing everything. He probably would have got 10 jobs because he thought, oh, the poor lady's mom's sick and it's 30-day ride. If it wasn't for big boy Nick coming in and just really feeling smug and really feeling like he had that big D energy going, that poor kid would have been just another cog in the wheel, just getting screwed around by this horrible, horrible woman. But I've been saying it. I'm going to keep saying it until I don't believe it. But right now, we're 5 episodes into this wonderful series. I still think it's one of the strongest series of this anime season. And feel free to disagree all you want, but that's how I feel. Yeah, there may be noticeable production issues, but I mean, hey, we even solved part of that. They now can talk inside their heads. They don't even have to animate mouth flaps anymore. I mean, they're solving the issues, right? They're being very thoughtful about things, so I gotta give credit where credit's due. Now, I do have a full live reaction to today's episode available on my Patreon, so if you want to see that, consider supporting. But yeah, this episode, I mean, just every time I think I can't like the show more, I end up liking the show more. It's one of those watches where you'll see people say it a lot, and I don't usually agree with it, but there's been a recent increase, and shows like these completely get me, where the episode ends and I feel like I've watched less than 10 minutes, and the fact that over 20 minutes can fly by, where characters are just talking about their past, their trauma, or we're reflecting on just what happened to lead them to where they're currently at. Just everything about it is thought-provoking, it's engaging, and it just hits different. You do get a little action in this episode. We have our favorite sword Bond basically showing some OP powers. You go up against like this ice kind of ogre-like creature. It wasn't that long of a fight, and maybe it wasn't the biggest Sakuga fest you're going to see this season, but it was pretty cool to see how a character who, I mean, if they didn't give the handicap, I would have thought it would be a little too OP, because she comes in, right, and just pretty much 1-2 hits, it's all over. Turns out actually using the stamina and mana of the others, so I was a little worried at first, because I was like, if you can do this, then you guys can just bring some lawn chairs, sit by and let Bond kill all the enemies, and you'll have a very easy time. Which could work for comedy, sure, but would it work for the rest of the season? Probably not. But by giving that limitation, it makes it feel like, oh, this could either be like a last resort or a starting move, rather than just, oh, I can just do everything by myself. No, it is something that definitely is going to be useful in certain ways, but can be a hindrance in others. And the fact that a character like Nick says he has no interest in the fusions anymore, I suspect someone will get a fusion before the season's over once again. But I mean, I like that they're not just trying to say we have these One Punch Man maneuvers where we can just solo everything, or we can power up Power Ranger style and solve everything, right? They are saying that, they do have their standards. They're not going to do things they don't want to do. And also, some of the moves that are very powerful, they do end up being a negative for the other people. So I like the fact that this show isn't afraid to kind of like show those sides of the show. But I think the best part of this episode was hands down just focusing in on the trauma. Of course, we do get to see a bit more from our girl's side when she was initially leaving, and we're seeing who she kind of ended up pulling down with her. I really thought we were about to get like, this dude was gonna burn down the school. I mean, the first thing he does is he gives her this igniter, and I'm like, okay, I mean, that's fine. That's just a nice little parting gift. But then he starts laughing like a maniac, and I was like, okay, like, is this dude about to like snap because he's worked his entire life to be a sage or whatever, and now he's basically being pulled down as well? But it just seems more like there was nothing else the guy could do other than laugh, because just everything kind of went to hell. So, he just basically broke down laughing. He just couldn't stop. I think it was meant to be a little disturbing, but not in the way that he was actually going to become a horrible monster. Then again, we could learn more, and he does end up doing it. But I mean, the whole time I was waiting for the shoe to drop. Like, I mean, oh man, this guy's gonna burn down the building, isn't he? He's like a full-on psycho because he lost everything. But no, it was actually some pretty genuine advice, and then she parted ways. So I found that stuff pretty interesting as well. But Nick's content was hands down the best part. I mean, the boy wakes up and he's got like just idols plastered all over his room, bonds on the floor, just like basically invading dreams. And then we finally get more with his ex, and just to see how he throws it in her face, I like the fact that these characters, right, their trauma defines them, and definitely it can haunt them, whether in dreams or just day-to-day life. But the fact of the matter is, he's not at a place where he's still at his absolute lowest. He has companions that he actually generally enjoys traveling with, And while he may still be haunted by what she did to him, he sees a younger version of himself here. He's like, I'm not going to let the same thing happen to this boy and then have him just hate the world or hate people in general. And instead, he just is very smug about it. The most shocking part was, I believe his name was Leon. I wasn't expecting him to immediately do the, like, oh, I apologize move. And obviously, we see he gets a lot more scummy past that, but it did catch me off guard because my boy was ready to throw hands. And then it just comes into, he's like, oh, you guys got a good party here. You're probably really swindling them. You can just see, like, in that moment, like, you start getting a little red flags, but of course you want to trust Nick, because if you look at Nick as a character, he's the hardest character to understand what he's thinking at a moment's notice. He is probably the biggest glue that keeps them together, but I feel like he reveals the least in comparison to the other three, or other four at this point now. I really feel like Nick is one of those characters who, at a moment's notice, you might be able to think, is he the craziest and most disturbing of them all, but at the same time, he seems like the most humble of them all. So in a moment like that, it definitely makes you for a brief moment say, oh man, did he originally plan to do something like that? But I mean, we can see by the end of that whole interaction, I mean, even ignoring the fact that he almost dislocated the guy's shoulder, that no, this party means something to him, and he's not as low as what they do, sort of a thing. But I will say Glasses, when Glasses came in and basically knocked Nick off of him, I mean, Curran comes in and slams the face into the ground. Granted, wearing glasses, you hear the glass shattering sound effect. Obviously, there's no glass in the eye or anything, but that could have been very brutal. I mean, I thought that was like, okay, I mean, usually when characters wear glasses and they fall down, they don't go the extra detail to show you that, no, they actually did break their face going down, and glass could have went right into the skull. So I was like, okay, they ain't playing. But it was fun. It was a good interaction because I like the fact that the trauma remains relevant in the way that they either reflect on it or it comes back to haunt them. We know with a character like Curran, our favorite dragon girl, eventually she's going to meet up with the people who stole what was precious to her, right? That's just the natural progression in a show like this. But I like the fact that rather than just making them feel like we just met them right after they were betrayed, you can write stories like that, and revenge stories do that. But rather than this being a revenge story, it's more about a story of second chances and regrouping and that growth. And as the show reminds us, this is the group that will eventually save the world. And I think sometimes when you have characters who do hit their lowest and then they just magically become heroes, that can be negative if it's not written well. I would argue a show like this, over the 5 episodes we've seen, and them reminding us we know exactly where the story's going. We can't be swindled like someone like this girl does to these poor bastards. No, we're not being swindled in the way that, oh, they're actually going to destroy the world. No, like, the show constantly reminds us that this is their journey, right? They are going to be the heroes that save the world someday, and certain moments were like the start of it. So I like the fact that this show has a very clear identity, it knows what it wants to do, and in doing so, it makes for a very enjoyable watch. Production issues or not. And I still stick by what I say. I point out the obvious production issues. Sometimes they walk really goofy, sometimes the fights can be really goofy. But in the key moments, whether it is key character facial moments where they really want to express the emotions that they're going through, or in certain fight scenes, they do really bring their A game, and they're working in limitations. They are doing what they can to the best of their abilities, and the story and characters are holding the production up when it does fall down. But there are those key moments that I really do enjoy about the production, and it does have an old school feel. So it just kind of feels like we just discovered, like, you know, some random anime company released a new BD. We're just like, oh, what's this show? I've never heard of it. And it just kind of feels like what you could do to an HD remaster of like a 1990s anime in a way, right? You can point out the obvious production issues, but that's kind of like the charm it gives me. So it makes it easier to digest when it does look a little more sloppy and stuff. But I'm loving this one. But either way, let me know what you're feeling about this show down below. What did you think of throwing the trash right to the street? Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, ring that bell if you want to get notifications to the channel. Also be sure to head on over to the Patreon if you want to see that full live reaction like I mentioned. And while you're there, you'll also get yourself a video shout-out. So today we got Mr. Maru, Marvin Ulrich, and Ricardo Pelago. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.